Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carl Sawatsky, and on behalf of CTC Train Canada, I'd like to welcome you to part 2 of this very popular topic on Excel formulas. And probably more than any other Office feature, because there's just so many Excel formulas, probably in the neighborhood of around 500, there's always that nagging thought of, what am I missing out on? What else is out there that can help me do my job better? Well, back in June, we had a great session, part 1, that covered such topics as mathematical operators, auto functions, date functions, so much more. And today's webinar will only add to that. So you'll come away with a real solid toolkit of functions, formulas that'll help you out in your daily work. With us today, we have one of our senior Office instructors, Denis Laflamme. Denis has over 10 years of experience as a Microsoft certified trainer, so we're very much looking forward to what he can bring to the table for us. So without further ado, I'll pass the word to you, Denis. We're certainly looking forward to learning about some more advanced functions of Excel formulas. Thank you.
All right, good morning to the west and afternoon to the east. I hope that everybody's having a great Wednesday. And so my name is Denis Laflamme. I'll be your Microsoft guy for the day. And let me share my screen here so that you can see what's going on. And basically here are our subjects for the day. As Carl mentioned, if you have any questions, type them out in the chat. And then we'll be able to potentially address them. We have a couple of hundred people on the call, so obviously we're going to make sure that we try to answer as much as possible. And if we can't get to you right away, then potentially maybe just by email after. So today we're going to talk about array formulas, subtotal feature, the date and time functions. We're going to talk about flash fill and concatenate and when to use which one. We'll also talk about index and match versus the V or the H lookup. We're talking also about the round function to be able to make sure that our numbers line up. And last but not least, a small dessert, just quickly talking about table references and formulas. I am also making sure that the recorder is being on, so we're going to be hopefully be able to present this after. So, without any more delays, let's talk about array formulas. So what's an array? An array means a group of things, right? So normally you would say, if I select these cells there, that's an array. Sometimes people have some sort of fear with the word array. So it's not a very complicated problem. Basically what we're trying to do is save time by, instead of having to enter a formula one by one, then what we want to do is be able to enter our functions in a faster way. So one example is if here I wanted to see the sales total for units and price, well, normally I would go equals, and then I would go this, multiplied by this cell, press enter, and then I could double click and, you know, just basically drag my formula down to wherever I want it. Now, if I Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, one of the ways to do that a little faster is to highlight the cells where you want your formulas to go in, and then when if you just start typing, it'll automatically start populating here, and then when you go units sold times price, what you can do is do Control Enter, and when you do that, boom, we have our results all lined up. So much faster if you have the same formula to enter and you don't want to have to copy. Of course, you can do this with Control Shift, as we saw in our first session. Now I'd like to be able to have the sum. And I try to integrate in these instructions as many keyboard shortcuts as possible, just because when your hands are on the keyboard, things go faster, right? So if I go here and I type Alt-L, which is the shortcut for keyboard for sum, automatically it'll automatic sum and it'll go pick my numbers. I press enter and I have my my sum. So that's one way. Now another way that we can do this is actually using the array, where I don't have to, instead of selecting cell by cell, I'm going to select range by range. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want this total here, but I want it to be able to calculate all of these sums. So I wouldn't have the sales total line by line. I just want to know what's going on as a total number. So I would say equals sum, and then press tab to get into my editing of the formula. And then I would go range 1 times range 2. So I'd go range 1 multiplied by range 2, right? And when I do that, if I do Control, Shift, and Enter, then automatically it'll select and create this formula. If I press F2 to edit this formula, you would see that now this is entered as an array formula, and then because I created the formula pressing Control, Shift, and Enter, automatically it calculates for me. We can prove that by this number here. Now, if I want to quickly have access to the currency format, well, you can just do Control, Shift, and the number 4. So Control, Shift, and the number 4, and there you go. I have my currency format. The other way to do that, it would be if we're sure that we're always going to have a product. Depending on the type of formula you have, we could use the sum product, which is an actual function that here it basically returns the sum of products with the ranges already defined. So once I go to my arrow down, find my sum product, press tab, it says array 1. Well, what's my array 1? My array 1 is this here. And then I'm going to comma, which is what the recipe asks me to do, and then say what's my array 2? And my array 2 is this one here. Once I'm done, all I have to do is press enter, and then I have my array here that has calculated my amount the same way. So instead of having to do a range formula and then go Control, Shift, and Enter, I just create this formula using the sum product function. And then, of course, if I want to apply my currency format, once again, Control, Shift, and number 4, and I have my currency format. Yay, that's going well. Okay, so that's the speed at which we're going to go today. Another array function is the transpose. So very simply, you saw the array where I selected all of these and then started entering my formula here. So what I can do is do that for the same here. I'll select my range here, and what I want to do is transpose the information that is here so that instead of being in the columnar display, it's going to be in a row display. So I'm going to have my titles here, and then I'm going to have my data here. So it's that simple. We go equals transpose, and you notice I didn't click in the cell, right? Obviously, because if I escape out of that, if I click in the cell, then I'm only editing this cell, right? So let's zoom in a little. I'm going to highlight my area, and then this is my working cell. I press equals, and then I go transpose, tab, and then it's going to ask me for the array. So I'm going to select my array, and once again, this is an array feature, so I need to go Control, Shift, and Enter, and automatically my information here is going to be transposed into a vertical format. So we have our horizontal format, sorry. Now, it doesn't care if it's from horizontal to vertical, right? So you can just go from one to the other. It knows how to do that automatically, okay? So those are a few of the array features that you can do. So if you have any calculations that you want to do, let me just show you the formula here. Excuse me. Let me show you the formula bar, right? So if I look at my formula here, you'll see that because my formula is in squiggly brackets, right, curly brackets, then that means that it's an array. So whenever you see these curly brackets, your mind should trigger in saying, I'm going to be working inside an array, right? Now, the trick here is don't try to type these. You can't type these. You have to use Control, Shift, and Enter, and then your formula is going to line up. Okay, so I want to make sure, I'm going to put a little bit more volume here. And so let's move on to subtotal formulas. Okay, subtotal formulas is very simple. I have a table here that's got data, and I would like to be able to create subtotals, let's say, for my sales rep. Or I would like to create a subtotal for my regions, or both, right? Well, we have a function, which is a button, that is called subtotal. Now, it's under the data tab, right? So we have the subtotal feature in the outline group. And so the first thing that we need to do to make sure that this works properly is we need to sort by the field that we want to group our data, right? So normally some people would go, well, let's say I want the subtotal for my my region. Well, then I would come in here and then I would sort my data by region. And then once I've sorted my data, let me just display the data tab here, right? I would then come and sort. And this would enable me to just sort my data, right? So I have my east data and my west data and my south data. And then I would come in here, potentially insert a line and then put a sum or something like that and so on. Well, if I undo that, I actually have a feature in this system where basically when I'm in my table, if I go to the subtotal feature, what it's going to do is it's going to ask me at each change in. So basically, if you look at the region, because I've sorted it, now it's you know, the same, and if you cancel out of that, you see there's a change from east to midwest. So this is where, obviously, I would have the insertion of my function. Now, if you do this, for instance, in the sales rep, well, you're going to blow up your computer, basically, because you're going to have a subtotal every other line. So obviously, we want to make sure that we pick the right column when we're going to be doing that subtotal function. So we go to the subtotal, and at each change in region, then I want to have the function. Well, I'm going to use the function sum, and then I'm going to create a subtotal for the number of units sold and the sales and also the cost of goods, right? So if I just pop in and go, okay, now I have my subtotal here. Oh, I have my train tracks, so let's highlight those. And of course, the real way is to go format and then auto fit the column width, but I can also just double click here in the separator and it'll automatically adjust the right width. So I have my east subtotal, my Midwest subtotal, South, and at the end, after my West subtotal, I have my grand total. Pretty awesome. And now please notice that at the top left here, I have a grouping, right? So if I group for my second group only, then I have the second level here where I have just my subtotals, right? So I could do this and say, well, if I want to, let's say, go and see what's going on in the South, then I could click on the plus here and expand the information just for the South, and I see my subtotal here, right? So sometimes you don't need to see the details, so you would go to the second group, right? So the first group here is just the grand total. The second group is just my subtotals, and then the third group is, of course, all of the data. Now, I might want to copy and paste only the subtotals here if I want to paste that somewhere else, right? So what I could do is I'm going to highlight my the area, and then if you go to special, so if you press on the F5 key, right, you'll go to the special selection, and then what you can select here is visible cells only, right? So if I take this right now and I come in here and I copy this, right, and I come down here and I paste this, Control V, then I'm actually getting all of the detail here, right? So I don't want that. What I want is just this information here. So I highlight the information, right, and then I'll press F5, or I can say find, select, go to, right? So the shortcut for this is F5, and then when I get to my go to, then I will go to special and say visible cells only. So now what it's going to do is select the visible cells only here, click on OK, and now if I copy, Control C, and I come in here and I Control V, then I have just here my data. You see how there's no group? So this way I don't have the burden of all of my data under the information, right? So sorry, I had to redo my parking gig. So now we have our subtotals ready to go, and of course I can come in here, and if I want to see more details, I can do that. Now let's say that I'm in here now, and you know what? I wanted to have my subtotal for sales rep and then by region, right? So if I wanted to remove these subtotals, when I go back to my subtotals feature, I can actually remove all, and then automatically it'll remove all of the subtotals and leave my data intact, right? So now the first thing I want to do is I said I want my sales rep to be sorted. So I'm going to come in here and basically just sort, right? If you go to the data tab, sort my sales rep, and then come into my region and sort my region. So I have my sales rep sorted, and then I have my region sorted right after, right? So the first subtotal I'm going to do, click in my table, click on subtotals, and say I want my subtotals for my at each change in my region, right? I want the use the function for my actually, you know what? Let's put the sales rep first and say I want a subtotal for units sold, sales, and cost of goods, right? So I'll have that. So if I click on OK now, I have each subtotal for each sales rep, right? But I still have all of my regions here that don't have a subtotal. So what I can do is go back into my subtotal and then say add each change in region. So now I'm not selecting the sales rep, I'm selecting the region. I'm going to use the sum function for those same values, but this time I'm going to uncheck replace the current subtotals. So now I'm going to leave whatever subtotals is there and click on OK. So now I'm going to have my subtotals for my regions, and if I go just on my groups, then I can have that. I actually did that backwards. Sorry about that. So remove that all, and let's come in here. Let's do subtotals for my regions, and then, so I have my subtotals for my region, and then subtotals for my sales rep, and here we go. So now I have my subtotals for my sales rep and my grand subtotals for my region here. And if I do just the third group, I have each sales rep for each region. And if I just do the fourth group, I have all of the details. So all of the details in fourth, all of the regions separated with the sales rep. And then if I go to the second group here, I have all of the regions up here, which is obviously the proof that I have in my copy paste here. Right? So subtotal, really easy to integrate. Just remember that when you're doing your subtotals, that first of all, like me, you need to do make sure that you do them in the right order if you have multiples, and then make sure that you select the right function, right? So you need to make sure that it's the right change and which function you're going to use. So you could use a count function, you can use the average, or whichever function you would like to have. And then, of course, that'll apply to here. So you could say, I want to count the units, and then I want to see how much sales there are, and then I want to see the average per region, and combine really how you want it to. Okay, so one of the easiest ways to get the subtotals going. Okay, so let's talk about different date and time functions. When we talk about date, what is a date? Well, if you look at this number here, this is equal to today, right? So the date is basically, if I say, if I convert 1, and I convert 1 into a date format, you see that it's January 1st, 1900. So when you see 42,991, that means there's 42,991 days since January 1st, 1900. Knowing that you're in Excel and that this is a number and you can calculate numbers, then you know that, of course, if you need to do operations on date, then you'll be able to do that, right? So here are some of the functions here that we have. Sorry, let me zoom back here. So here are the functions, some of the functions that we have for days. That's not all of them, of course, but if you were to take a full day course, you would be able to spend some time going into the formula tab and going into the date and time and have all of those dates here and time functions. Obviously, we wouldn't cover all of them, but they're pretty fun to discover. So if we look at today, we'll show the today's date. Now we'll show the function of today and the time. And then we have year to be able to extract the year out of a number, month, day, end of month, which is a function that tells you what a date is at the end of this month. We'll have an example a little bit lower down. E-date for basically if you want to jump into a specific period from a specific date. And then, of course, date, which enables you to build a date from a specific number. So if we just look at calculating dates, right? Well, if I want to know how many days are different between this date and this date, I would go equals the bigger number minus the smaller number, and I press enter, and automatically I have 5 days difference here. Same thing for, let's say I have a project start and project date, right? So I would go equals my start date minus my end date, but I need to add 1 because I want to calculate the start date, right? I'm not just deducting this, so plus 1, and I have now the difference in dates, right? So if I wanted to add 10 days to a specific date, you just basically add them. This date equals this date plus this number, and that gives me 10 days, and now I know that I've jumped enough days. So for instance, if you're in accounting and you have a 30, 60, 90 day, then you can type today plus 30, 60, 90, and automatically these dates will adjust. So if I want to just show today, right, this is a function that if you go today and there's no variables to the today function, so you can just go bracket, bracket, and then when you press enter, automatically I have today's date. I hope that's right because it takes the calendar's date. Awesome. And I also have the now date that we talked about, which basically is today's date and the time, right, as a whole number. Now, every time you update something, these are what's called volatile, so they will recalculate when something's updated, right? So if I edit something and then I control, then automatically my date will, you'll see that the cells will recalculate, okay? So now, again, double click and have bracket, bracket to be able to open and close bracket to be able to have the value there, right? So if I wanted to go to the end of this month, right, the end of month, right, so if I go equals end month, press tab, so I want the start date, and then do I want the end of this month? If I wanted the end of last month, I would go -1 as my other variable, or 1 as next month. So if I say my start date is today, and I wanted the date of the end of the month here, I would just basically put comma for the month that I want to go to. If I press 0, then automatically I will have the end of this month. And did you see that my now function updated, right? So if I wanted the end of last month, F2 to edit this function. If I go -1, then it'll give me the end of last month. And of course, if I wanted to go to next month, I just press 1, and automatically I have next month. So those are easily calculatable if you need to get to the end of the month quickly. Like we said, eDate is a function that's just going to jump forward or backward, of course, with the same concept through the months given at the start date. So now if I go end of month, right, so eDate, right, press tab, the start date is here, and then I say I want to jump 1 month, then comma 1 month. The advantage of this is that now I'm jumping the exact date, or what represents the exact date from this month, right? So it's easily, when you need to have 1 or 2 months ahead with the precise date, not the end of the month, then with the eDate, you're going to be able to jump months from today's date, or whatever I get, right? If you have, for instance, you have a year here, right, and you need to add 5 years to this date, then of course if I go equals, equals this date, and then I go plus, right, this date, then I'm just adding 5, right? So what I want to do is I need to multiply this by the 12 months that I'm going to use, because obviously the golden rule in Excel, of course, as you remember from our first session, if you were there, is that if you have a variable that could change, you don't hard code it, right? You would just use a cell. But if it is something that is not going to change, so for instance, the number of months in an area, then you can just add 5 years to it and we'll be able to find it out, right? So not a very complicated concept to run. Now, if we have basically extracting dates out of a number, a serial number like this could be cumbersome, right? So what we can do is use the date function. And basically what it'll do is it'll build a date out of whatever's available in your cell here. So if we go date, the first thing I want is the year. Now the year here is in the first 4 digits of this serial number here. So there's a function called left, and then basically asking me what are the number of characters that I want. So I want the first 4 characters out of this series here. Then it says, well, you want the month, so comma, and now the month is in the middle, so mid, and then it's asking me what's the first number and how many characters do I want. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 5th number is what I want, and I want to have the 2 digits, so 5 and 6 basically. Now close that bracket, and the day is basically the first 2 digits from the right. So yes, you've obviously gathered. I need the number of characters, 2 number of characters from the right. And now if I close this bracket, I get my date. I'm going to get my dates here, right? So, oops, sorry. Okay, so basically here, so I have yes, sorry, of course, I didn't give you the text to put into the formula. So when I get into the left, so it's the left of these 4 digits here, and then the mid from the 5th digit and the 6th digit here, and then the right from this cell adding the 2nd digit. Now, when I want to copy that, all I have to do is double click, and of course, it'll now go through and say 2010, 17, 7, 17, 7, 2010. So we know that my function works properly. If I press F2, I can see here that I have all of my right information with me. So basically, taking serial numbers and converting them into dates. Okay. Now, let's advance here. We're going at a good pace. Let's look at some data where we have to create information from. We have to extract information out of dates here to be able to get some sales reports, right? So we've seen that we have some ifs, where if I say, for instance, I want to sum all of the numbers in this column here, depending on which day or which month or which year it is, then or which quarter, then you know, I would need to have some help columns basically to be able to figure those out. So let's see how we can use the functions we've talked about. So we have the year function. So basically, all we need to do is say equals year, which is the function, and then go pick which one I have here. So if I wanted to extract the year out of this this date here, I would go equals year, and then take the serial number, which is this one here, and then close my brackets, press enter, and it's extracted my year, right? The same thing for month. Right, so basically extract the month. Now, when you do months, what it does is it actually gives you which month it is. So, for instance, here, my month here is March, right, or the 3rd month. So if I came in here and I said equals month, right, tab, bracket, and then I can just come and pick my month here. If I close my bracket, then it says this is the 3rd month, okay? Now we have, of course, the day. So same thing again. It's the serial number of the day here. So we're talking about the 25th day here, 9th day, 29th day, and it'll extract that. Now, when we want to show the month name, basically we're going to use a function called text, right? So if we go equals text. And I'm going to let you discover by going into the instruction manuals if you need to really have the details on all of the different options on text. But if I press tab, then basically the text value is, I have the value here. And what I'm going to do is extract either the day, the month, and so if I go comma, and then I'm going to put in quotes what I want to see. So if I wanted to see, for instance, the 3 days of the month, the 3 letters of the month, then I would put this month into put 3 M's, and then I would have the first 3 letters of the month name. If I put 4 little M's there, then I will have the complete month, and if I put 5, then I would get just the first letter. So if you go and you click on the actual explanation here, right, you have the explanations of how this works. If you click on the text help function and you scroll down, you'll see that you have a table here that will show you at the way bottom there the different ways that you can use the function text and how you can combine days and months and things like that. So you have all of the formats here, and then you have all the explanations of how to access those. Now, so I wanted to see just the 4th days. There we go. We have our month name. Same thing for the day name, so text, and then I have 3 Ds for the day name. If I wanted to see the entire day name, I would put 4 Ds, and then I would have the entire day, right? So it basically says, I'm grabbing this, and it's going to be the day name here. So the other function that I might want to see is the quarter, and how basically the quarter happens is that you need to, if you look at this month here, right? So, and I'll let you discover this with the formula that I have here, but basically what you're doing is you're dividing your number by 3, and then, or your number by 3, and then you'll be rounding up to the number to the 0, so that you don't have any decimals, and this will basically force your quarters to be displayed, so that if I'm able to if I'm able to combine these with different letters, then I can create different quarters, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and so on. So let me just get rid of that so that my example actually looks good. Right, so if I take all of these formulas and then I double click on, instead of dragging, I can just double click on my autofill, and then basically you'll see that now when I'm double clicking, right, this is the 1st month, 2nd month, 3rd month, 4th month, and basically what we're doing is we're rounding up the value, right? If I evaluate this, you'll see that it's basically dividing by 3, which is 1/3 of it, and then you can just round it up to the number to 0 digits, basically to 0 decimals. We'll talk about roundup in a couple of different tabs. So now what I did here is I used the ampersand to join to create this label here, right? So basically I did, I have Q, which is just a letter that I put in brackets, and then ampersand I63, which is basically this number here, ampersand space dash space, which I put in between brackets, and then also join the year that I have here, right? So if I were to retype that, right, I would say equals quotes Q quotes join this with now the number, so I want Q1 or 2 or 3, so Q1, and then I want to have in quotes space dash space in quotes, and then join the year, right? So now if I press enter, I have Q1 dash Q16. The reason that I have that is that I'm going to use this label here to be able to use in my sum if, so that I say I want to see the sales for quarter 1, quarter 2 for each of those years, right? So if we go here and work our way backwards, I would say in here equals sum ifs, right? And then press tab to get into my function. My sum range is going to be all of my sales. So I click on my first sales, Control Shift, and then press the arrow down, which selects everything, and then I press F4 to confirm my choice, then comma. So now I've created my range of my sum. My criteria range is, of course, where my labels are. So Control Shift, arrow down, press F4. So that's my criteria range, where my criteria is going to be looked at, and which criteria. So I'm only going to have one, and it's going to be here. Right? Now, obviously, I'm not going to give it an absolute, so that when I force my my SUMIF, or when I copy my SUMIF over, then the function will work, right? So now I have 2328. If I wanted to check my quarter-1 sum for 2016, quarter-1 2016, which is up here. If I add those, I see that I have 2328, which is the right value, right? So I can just, if I just extract or push this autofill this feature here, this function here, I have now my calculations. And as you remember, right, what is the function to be able to get the currency format? Control Shift and number 4. So Control Shift and number 4, and now I have my currency here, right? So same thing here again. Let's do another SUMIF just to give another example. Again, you'll have all of these in the document if you download it. So the sum range is this one, Control Shift arrow down F4, and then the criteria range is the year. So Control Shift and F4, and then the criteria, comma, is here. Close my brackets, press enter, and I have my total for 2016, and of course, my total for 2017. Let's do one last one with the days. So, of course, equals SUMIF, and then tab. My sum range, once more, is my sales. Control Shift arrow down F4, and then my criteria range this time is going to be the day. So I want to see which of those days is more profitable. So select all the days, Control Shift F4, then I press comma to enter my criteria, so that I say, please look at this day through the range that I'm looking at, and close my brackets, and now I have my entire my results for Mondays. And then, of course, I can double-click to extract that. Of course, I could have just selected those, press Enter, Control-Enter if I hadn't been in edit mode. Okay, so a bunch of SUMIFs to be able to create the reports. Again, this session is going to be recorded, but if you really want to play a lot with these calculation functions, invest in an afternoon or a day to be able to get some training on all of those. They're really useful to be able to generate reports quickly without having to manipulate the data too much.
Could I, Denny, could I interject with a couple questions before the next section?
Please.
First one, just a general one. So for people who are working on Office 2010, are any of the features that you've covered unique to 2013 or 2016? Not that
no, in the next one will be, which is flash fill, but
okay.
So far, no.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah, if you can identify the ones maybe that are, that would be awesome. Also, Stephanie asked, I think this is going back a little bit, about if you can use the subtotal function in a pivot table.
Well, the pivot table in itself will enable you to do that. So when you have, when you're creating your pivot table, you would automatically have subtotals depending on what you put in your rows. So yeah, that would be something to be explained more in a pivot table, but basically that's what the pivot table does, right? Just here. Let's take 30 seconds. Oh, Stephanie. Remove those. So I'm going to insert a pivot table. This is not, I'm not teaching you how to use a pivot table. I'm just demonstrating how this works. So basically click on a table, insert pivot table in a new sheet, and then I would say I want my sales rep, and then I want the count of units, I want the sum of sales, and the sum of cost of goods. And now I have these, and then I could then add my regions to my rows, and then I would have east, midwest, south, like that, right? So in a very, very quick manner, this is how you would have your subtotals created, and then you could expand and collapse depending on which values you're in. And then you can, of course, manipulate the design to be able to see, you know, the report layout, let's say in outline form, and so on. So that's my incredibly fast answer to the subtotaling through pivot tables.
Yeah, that was the fastest pivot table creation I've ever seen. That was awesome. And last, just on the section on dates, Meyer asked about what do you do if the first quarter of your fiscal year starts April 1? Is there anything different that you do for that?
Yeah, and the answer is longer than I can. You know what? Send us an email and we'll
I might do something offline. Okay.
Yes, it can be done because obviously you want to be able to line up the quarter for your own fiscal year, but that's outside of the scope of this session.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so Meyer, I will send that to you. And more people are asking about the workbook, but yes, it will be sent out to you after the fact. So, yep, that's all the questions for now. Thanks, Denis.
My pleasure. All right, let's play with flash fill. I got to tell you, this is probably one of the, you know, if you geek out over Excel, and you ever have to clean up data, this is one that will definitely, you know, fill your boots. A lot of times you have data that you need to clean up or you need to change the format. And this is definitely something that we have in 2016 here where we can, you know, clean up our data. There's a bunch of ways that we can do it, right? But, excuse me, flash fill will enable you to do that really quickly. Not going to explain too much of the difference, but basically we have Control-E. And then in the data tab, under the data tools, we have our flash fill here if you wanted to find the button. So let me just demonstrate ad nauseum and you'll get the gist. So for instance, if I wanted to extract the first name out of this, well, I could go left as 02 and all that, but there's no consistency of being able to program that. So if I just come in here and I type Mo, and I need to be against the data here. When I press Control-E, or if I just come in and here and type in, then you'll see here a ghost flash fill start to appear, right? So if I go Control-E, or press Enter on this, it will automatically flash fill for me. And what it's doing, basically, we call this programming by example. It basically says, here's the example of what I want to see, and you go ahead and figure it out in the other data that's here, right? So let's say, for instance, I wanted the last name, right? So Dim, but I wanted, you know, in a proper form. So I want just the first capital. If I press Enter and then Control-E, it'll actually do that for me and be able to extract this. Super exciting, right? Now, just before you start saying, you know, this is the solution to all of my problems, this does not update, right? Flash fill does it once. So if I come here and I say it wasn't actually MODIM, it was NODIM, then automatically this data here is not going to update. This is where you would want to have that concatenate happen, right? But now there's a bunch of creative things you can do. You can, for instance, extract the initials. So I want the first letter of this and the first letter of that. I would go M space D, press Enter, Control-E, and it would actually go and see here all of those CMR, and now it's going, oh, you know what, hold on here, it's taking the first letter here, and then it's taking the two letters here. So my problem is that I need to give it a better example. So now I'm going to modify this, and then all of a sudden, because I gave it a better example, it says, oh, you want the first letter of both of those? Well, there you go. Here's the first letter of first word and the second one, right? I could also reverse, right? So let's say I need to change the case. So I go dim space mo, like this, dim space M, right? And I go Control-E, then automatically you see here that it's going to get the first letter and then go to the last name, right? Let me give you another example that I'm sure many of you in the public sector have had to do, and that's build an email list right? If you've been into the ETI at anywhere in Canada, you've had to create a bunch of emails. Well, here's a very easy way. Let's say we go first name, last name at canada.ca. Well, I would say first name dot last name dim at canada.ca, press enter, and then go and flash fill, and it would automatically create all of those for me very, very quickly, right? I actually, I'm going to clean that up there just so that it flash filled up in my columns here. So I have all of these emails that have been created, allison.foo at canada.ca. So you can create things, you can add variables, right? Like if I said, for instance, I'm going to delete that. Let's say I wanted DIM-001 and I wanted to be able to do that for the rest, then it would automatically do that for me, right? So I can add whatever I want to the text as long as I'm against the text. What's the difference between this and concatenate? Well, concatenate, right, which is join, right, will be able to modify the data. So let's say, for instance, that I say I want the first name and then comma the last name here, which I'm going to change, right? Close my brackets. Here I want the last name, and I want to flash that. Excuse me, let me get rid of that. Here, flash fill. Oops, not too sure what I'm doing there. Hold on, maybe I'm editing my bed. Let me just clear that all and come in here and go dim, excuse me, Control E, and then, oh yeah, it's because I changed the format there and I changed the case. Excel's not liking it. So I'll basically what we're seeing in the example here is just that in concatenate, whatever I put in the values here will automatically update. So if I change here the names here, then automatically these will, the concatenate will update automatically. Now, if you need to insert spaces and elements inside of your concatenate, you would just want to go, for instance, space, right? And then when you go into the function builder, automatically what it'll do is it will put in quotes whatever text you have in here. So if I say I want the last name, and now automatically I can see my result. It's the name with the space in there. I click in that, and then when I come down, then I'll have all of my first and last name updated. And if anything changes, then they'll change here, right? So let's continue flash fill. We got 12 minutes. Let's say that I want to convert these phone numbers into proper phone numbers. So it's 206 bracket space 587. I hope that's not a real number. 5874545. Let's all dial it at the same time. Control E, and all there you go. We have our phone numbers converted. An example for instance, if I wanted the last color, well, in this case it's red, right? So now if I go flash fill, then did I actually get the last one? No, I got the first one. So I need to then give it a better example, and then it's going to automatically check that, right? Another way to do flash fill is if you have data, for instance, here this is entered as text, but you want it to be able to insert a lead apostrophe so that all of those are seen as text. I would go leading apostrophe and then 90513, press enter, flash fill, and then all of my data is now, if you press F2 to edit, you see that now I have that apostrophe there to make sure that this text is stored as numbers. Is stored as text, sorry. If I wanted just the numbers to extract that, 1574, press enter, Control E, and then I have my numbers extracted. So the flash fill works really well. If I needed to separate things like this, then flash fill is not my friend. This is a job for text to column, which you've seen before, I'm sure. If you haven't, then basically you take your data and you need to specify what is separating the data. So in this case, it's commas, right? So I would select my data, and then inside of my data tab, go to my text to column, and then I say that it's delimited. It is delimited by commas, so I'm going to delimit by comma, and as you can see, it cuts it up automatically. Then I say, I could specify the formats, and then I can, of course, specify the destination. So I'm going to say, please go put this here, and please go put this here, and now this is where the data is going to go. Finish that, and then I have my data separated from here. So flash fill is not something that would be useful for that because there would be too much clutter for it to learn by example. Okay? Can we move on, Carl? I'll take that as
sorry, there were a couple questions. Jennifer was asking for the flash fill, where can you place the results? Can it be anywhere on the spreadsheet?
No, it can't. It has to be against the data. You
okay.
have to, right against the table. If I come in here and I say V and I try to flash fill, it's not going to take it because it doesn't see the data. The data needs to be against the data.
Okay, good. And Darlene was asking, with flash fill, is there a way to see what logic the program has used to fill in the data afterwards?
Nope.
No.
It just looks at the data and says, if I come in here, for instance, and I type V, if I go to flash fill, then it's going to take basically the first. Do you see how it's not? It's just taking basically right now. It's considering this the first word. So if I wanted the first letter, I would need to come in here and then specify, and then it would automatically do that. But there is a basic deduction to have happen in flash fill.
Okay. And is it safe to say that flash fill function, it's really like the filter function, but then some, or?
Well, yeah, basically the flash fill is kind of like a filter, but it enables you to transform data into something else. So if you wanted to modify something into something else, then it quickly enables you to do that by giving the example. It has its limits, but that's pretty much how we're laying it up.
Okay, excellent. Good. Yeah, that's all the questions there so far. Again, just to ask everyone, quick favor, input your questions in the chat box, not the Q&A box. My Q&A box isn't expanding properly, and I'm having a hard time reading them. So, yeah, feel free to punch those into the chat box.
Okay, thanks, so I have a situation here where I want to use the index and or the match function, or both. And so sometimes if you've used a VLOOKUP, right, or vertical lookup, or HLOOKUP, horizontal lookup, and again, I apologize if this is going fast, but this is a taster of what can be done. I've left the formulas in here for you to be able to look at and recreate if you need to. So basically, let's say that I have a drop down here that lists all my descriptions of my kites, and I want the flying range of these, and basically when I select one of these, I want it to be able to then say which product does that represent. Well, if I'm trying to do VLOOKUP, you know that in VLOOKUP it says first, look in the first column and then go find the data in column 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, obviously VLOOKUP here is not the ideal situation. It can be done, but it is pretty complicated to pull out because you have to include shoes and go into an array. So it gets a little convoluted. So let's look at the index function. So the index basically is a function that it kind of looks like VLOOKUP. It basically returns a value in the either row or column position. So for instance, if we take this example here, the flying range here is in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th row, right? And if I go here, basically rang is my product name in the 5th row of this range here, right? So if I just look at match, right? If I just look at index, then my index here is it basically takes whatever value is found in this range, and it comes back and returns a number. So if I came here and I said, well, instead of putting this match to figure out the number, which I'll explain in a minute, I just wrote the number 5, then basically it's going to go in this range and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there you go. Now, if I write this number 5 here, that variable is not going to change, so I need a way to be able to figure out which number, which row, or which column this value is. So that's why I'm going to use match, right? So what match does is it says, take the value that's in here, and then go look up in this range, and give me an exact match, which is the match type that we can have, either less than, exact match, or more than. I want an exact match, and basically now what I'm going to do is say this is going to generate a number, which is 5, which is the same number that I have in here, right? So if I take this function, excuse me, if I take this function, copy that, right, and then I come into my index function and I actually push this match, then if we go back to index, index says in this range here, in this array, right, please go find the value that is going to be the number of row or column, and the number of row or column is going to be defined by the match that is in here, and the match that is in here is going to find it by looking at what's in here and going to find where it positions. Again, the reason I'm using exact is because this is not in an order, right? Normally you would see 110 under the 10 here, so that's why we're using this. So now, if I give you this example and say go to flying range 1, flying range 1 is the second is 1, 2 here, and my quad is now my product here, right? So I'm keeping things moving super fast, but basically that's with one variable, right? I could then, let's say that I have, for instance, a variable where I have bids that are from different suppliers, and then my vendor here, I want to find which is the lowest bid for these people here. And so then I've used basically the minimum function, right? So how the minimum function works is basically going equals minimum, and then, excuse me, bracket, tab, and then find the minimum for this value, right? So that gives me a lookup value. This is the minimum in here. So now if I want to find the minimum for each line, I would just stretch that out, and that's the minimum for each of these lines. Now, if I want to know who gave me the minimum, then I have to take this minimum, go find it in here, and then say, oh, it's you, right? Well, now that you've seen the index, you understand that the index is going to find the array. The first thing that it's going to do is say, what value do you want to come back? Where is the value that I'm going to answer you with? And that is this here. That's never going to change, so we're going to make this an absolute value, okay? Then, which row do you want? Well, I want the row that is represented by where this number is. So I'm going to match, and basically, if you only have one value, you don't have to specify the row number. You could just type it here, and if there's only one value, it'll do the row or the column. But by politeness, we actually add an extra comma in here. So now match this value here inside of this range here. Of course, we're not going to do any absolutes here because we want to be able to copy this down. And I want an exact match because, of course, this number here needs to be exactly this number. So now it takes this number, finds it, goes into the index, returns the value. So now if I double click this down, bloop, and there you go, we have now our proof. So if I F2 on this function, it says index of this here, and which column am I going to return? I'm going to return the column that has this value found here, which is this one here, which is mech aid. If I press Control Enter, I have mech aid here, right? So again, index is going to return a value for either the number of row or the number of column that is found, and I defined this number by creating a match to be able to find where that value is going to be. One final example for match and index, right? So for instance, if I have multiple values, I have part 1 here, which is, let's say I have a part 4, right? So part 4 would be this line here, and then the quantity. Now I have not an exact match, right? I have kind of like the VLOOKUP, right? The 2 commas, sorry, Lynn, I just saw the question there. The 2 comma is because in the function, in the index function, it says row or column, right? If I don't use the second column, it's going to assume that it's a row, but it will still find it because there's only one value, right? The reason that I did add a second comma is because I want to be polite with the function and say, this is the row is nothing, and then the column value is this one, right? So that's just that politeness inside of the function, basically. So for instance, if I say 5, well, 5 is up here, and the part is part 4, so this is the number that I'm looking for. So of course, I would use either match or index, and basically, just because I am running out of time, I'm going to show you what happens. And so, excuse me, I'm going to copy this and then save that. Right, so basically what's happening is that I am doing an index for this entire array here, and then I am matching my first row is going to be this match, which is basically finding which of this is found in this area, in this range here. I want an exact match because I'm using part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then my column number is going to be the match of the number in the quantity, and I'm not using an exact match because I have a range from 1 to 100, right? So now if I come in here and I say I have 8, then automatically that's more than 5 is going to stay in here. If I go, it's not up to 25, but it's more than 5. So if I go 26, then automatically it's going to move the match here and say, well, it's part 4 over 25, so it basically has that, it respects the value and gives me my 20%. So now in this match, I am using 2 different variables, one for my row and one for my column. And the index is what's coming back, which is the value inside of this range, because I've now found the cross line between those 2 values. Okay, I know this is fast, people, but I got to tell you, these are, of course, going to be playable and gives you a taste of what happens when we're getting into the advanced Excel training. Carl, do you think we can extend for a couple of minutes on just this? I just want to show quickly the round function.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Why don't you go ahead, Denis? We understand if people have to cut out, but if you can stay, please do.
So basically, and this is all I have to show you. I just want to show you the difference between round, round up, and round ceiling and floor. Very quickly, if I say, for instance, I have a deduction percentage off of this number, well, obviously, you know, I would go equal this number multiplied by this deduction, F4 to make it an absolute value, enter, and now I have this value here, and then I have these 2 values here, and then when I add that, right, I'll go Alt-Enter, then I have this value here. Well, if you're a little quick with math, you'll go that 9649 should not end with 46 here, right? What's going on? Why is this happening? Well, it's happening because if you look at the decimals, there are decimals here that are still existing in the numbers. It's not because they're not displayed that they're not calculated. So what I want, obviously, is to say I don't want that extra penny or that extra 1,000 or whatever. So if I type these by hand, right, then this sum here of these 2 typed by hand, if I don't have any extra decimals, is going to give me the right number. So what I want to do is round it to the penny. So I'm going to come in this value here, and instead of just using this function, I'm going to say round, right? And then of this calculation, comma, what do I want? How many digits do I want? Well, basically how many digits after or before the period. So I want 2 digits. And then I have now my 2 digits that are rounded. If I look at the extra decimals, right, I have my round for this calculation, which is this times this, and I have 2 rounded to 2 digits, so 2 pennies. If I want to round to 1 penny or the dollar, the integer, then I could just write 1 or 0, right? So very quickly, if I want to round, for instance, this value here to the penny here, right? So I would have 2 pennies. If I want to round to the dollar, then I would write 0, and automatically it would round to the dollar. If I want to round to the thousandth position, I would write -3 in my round function, and then it would round my 58,900 to 59,000. So all I have to do is use the correct variable inside of my function, right? So same thing here for round, right? If I'm rounding in my round of numbers here, if I just round that, there's a variable or there's a variation to the round, which is round up, which means now I want to round up this number to, and then I would specify how many digits I want after the decimal. I can also round down, so that 101 would become 101.111 would become 100. So if I have 100.999, then automatically it would round to the lower number, right? So it round up or round down. M-round here basically is a standard rule to a specified amount. So if I have 104 here, but I want to round to the nearest 10, then I would basically say round this number to the nearest 10, right? So if I come in here and I write 105, then automatically it would round up to the nearest 10 here. So same thing here, right? If I have 104.99, then I have the nearest 10 is going to be 100, and as soon as I get to 105, I'm going to get nearest 10. 106 would give me 110. If I go instead of 106, I go 111, then I'm still there. 115, I get to 120. So that's the M round, which is a multiple round, so the number that you want to round and which multiple you want to use it. Yeah, ceiling. So same thing, right? So I take this number and then I say, what's the significance of what's the top ceiling? Again, the significance is going to be by 10 or by 20, whatever. So here, if I say the ceiling is by the tens, so if I come in here and I modify this to 109, 109, then it would go to 110. And then if I go to 101, then let's say 120, right? Then automatically it would near the ceiling. 121. There you go. It would go up, right? So the same thing at the other side is the floor. So I take this value here, and now the significance is to the lowest 10, so it rounds down to the 10. If I come in here and I go 111, then automatically it's going to go to the 10. If I go 121, it's going to round down to the 20. So even at 129, right, is going to floor to the nearest 10 here. So the significance can be, of course, whatever argument you want. Okay. I wanted to talk about table references, but I think that I've extended my my welcome 10 minutes past 3. So maybe in our next session we'll be able to talk about being able to use table references, so Control T, and be able to use the headers and the headers and the name of those columns inside of our functions, so that if I say, for instance, equals index of something, then my array here is now going to be using the name of the table and the header. And so we'll be able to play with index and match, and then, of course, use these in functions to make them absolute. The advantage of this is that when your table grows, then your data also follows because it's an absolute value. But not going to get into this. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. Sorry about that, folks. Back to you, Carl.
Oh, again, thank you very much, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the session, and we look forward to seeing with you on another course or perhaps another upcoming webinar. Thank you very much.